The sound is on, and you're with Radio New Haven Music. WYBC rocks.
Around the clock, 24 hours a day, WYBC FM is on the air in multiplex stereo at 94.3. WYBC FM, New Haven's only full-time radio station with up-to-date intelligent entertainment tailored to the listening tastes of young adults of all ages. Our programming varies from Queen to Coltrane, Hendrix to Handel, Simon & Garfunkel to Sam and Dave. The major emphasis, though, is on progressive rock, with as much as 16 hours each and every day devoted to the sounds of tomorrow, heard first today on WYBC FM. The day begins at 6 with sleepy-eyed Lee Mondell, always informative and interesting. On a typical morning, New Haven radio listeners are greeted with comments on events around the world or perhaps in the WYBC FM studios.
Barry Goldberg reunion. I just realized I haven't spoken of Leaf in a long while. Leaf is the Green Baron of Disneyland East, and he's our ugly plant. But Leaf is alive and well in WYBC land, and he's sitting there all sort of happy. He's a little frazzled from the beginning of the summer, basically because of all the people running around that don't like plants, which rip a leaf off or, step on him a little bit. But basically he's all right. How are you, Leaf? Yeah, he's fine. He's in good shape. This is Mr. James Hendrix and his experience.
All right.
Thing called Fire.
Now dig this, baby.
That's still the head honcho of acid rock, as far as I'm concerned. Jimi Hendrix and Fire. This is the Quicksilver Messenger Service.
Turn around. Go back down.
Quicksilver Messenger Service, number 31 this week on the WYBC FM survey, and it's called Pride of Man. We're counting them down through the survey of the WYBC First in Connecticut's, and also from album rock, stuff that you never hear on any other radio station. So stick with us until 10 o'clock and see what we mean. This is by the Blues Project. It's from their album Projections. The name of it is Steve's Song. That's Steppenwolf, and it's called Sookie Sookie, down to number 14 this week. It was a former number 2, I think it was. Got all the way up there. First half hour of the Play It Because It's on WYBC only half hour and hour. We heard Steve Miller Band, Barry Goldberg, Jimi Hendrix, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Blues Project, Steppenwolf. And before the news time, I think we can squeeze an Electric Flag and M-Boy Dukes. And coming up in the next half hour, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Kangaroo, The Hello People, Shades of Deep Purple, The Cream, Country Joe and the Fish, Orpheus, and Big Brother. I think, if I can squeeze everything in.
The sound is WYBC now.
Lee did manage to squeeze it all in. And by the way, that gives you some idea of just what we do play on WYBC FM. Many records that later became established hits in the New Haven area were heard first and heard months ahead at 94.3. As you can see, the WYBC FM air personality is just that. Unfettered by restrictive format or preset music policies, he talks to his audience instead of at them, and New Haven loves it. Each show on WYBC FM is very much an extension of the announcers, very much a matter of personal communication. If a man sees reality reflected in a comic strip, he makes it a part of his daily radio presentation and shares his delight with the audience. The man is Tom Guterbach.
Yardbirds and Shapes of Things for you on George, your daytime listening program here on WYBC. It's time now for our daily reading of Pogo, and this is something we do every day about this time. As you remember, the three bats in Pogo have been conducting polls on various things and discussing the merits and demerits of the various polls, and I do suggest you pick up a copy of whatever newspaper you know that has Pogo in it and read this, because, or look at it is what I mean, because the way it's drawn today is really, really something. A lot of very interesting, rare perspective. Well, I'll tell you about it. The three bats we find sitting on a very thin little log the bats aren't very big, you know. The grass grows way up above their heads in the swamp. And so the first bat is telling the others it can't be Saturday, as our last interviewee opined. So the middle one says, ask the casual passerby. And the third one looks off to his left and says, how casual. And so we see them looking at two bugs that come up. Now, one of the bugs has a tattered, very, very tattered top hat, and a beaver hat, as a matter of fact, and has a tie and a high collar, and very high eyebrows that reach up way up above the brims of his hat, and very long mustaches that reach all the way down past his collar, and a very long aquiline nose. He also has an umbrella. He's a very distinguished-looking gentleman, somewhat seedy and old, however. Along with him is a fat old guy with a sort of hunter's cap. This is a sort of a June bug type, and an ear. Is it called an ear horn? You know, the things that you use instead of a hearing aid to hear better if you're a little hard of hearing. And he's got a knotty cane and a full beard, and he looks a little red-nosed and drunk, but he is definitely hard of hearing. So we see, anyway, the two of the bats looking down between two knots of grass as these two tiny little bugs with all these features just barely visible in the distance coming up to them. And so the bat on nearest to them says, hey, casual passers-by, is it your opinion it's Saturday? And, of course, the one with the ear pipe says, how's that? And so in third frame we see the two of them, the one with the top hat bellows up at them, as any bloody blunk know, it's no Saturday by a bloody mile. Monday, that's the rum positive, mate. Monday. And the one with the ear pipe, of course, says, hey, what's I? And as they disappear into the distance, the fat one's still saying, what'd he say? What'd he say? We see the three bats with their sheets of paper and their pencils busily figuring it out. And the first says, of those alive and interviewed, 50 believe it's Saturday, 50% are of the opinion it's Monday. And the second one stares blankly at his sheet of paper, while the third one says, that means a prorated average mean vote fall zeroes in approximate somewheres in between, making it along about Sunday.
Baby, remember when we turned on to a rainy day?
That's Orpheus and their number 7 song here at WYBC. I've never seen love like this.
The sound is WYBC.
The sound is sometimes what the listener wants directly and receives immediately on the only all-request rock show in Connecticut, the Ken DeVoe program, heard daily from 2 till 6 p.m. on WYBC FM. Ken takes phone calls, and the callers hear what they want to hear when they want to hear it. The requests on any given afternoon can range from jug band music to comedy rock to progressive album cuts, almost all in high-fidelity multiplex stereo.
Unbelievable Jim Kweskin, the circus song. I played in a jug band for a couple of weeks freshman year, way back when I was a college student, right? And I played the kazoo. And when I didn't have my kazoo, I used to do an ad hoc kind of sort of improvised kazoo by taking your right hand or left hand, gripping your thumb and index finger together, forming a little loop, putting the fleshy part of that hand over your mouth and going like that, and you've got an instant kazoo. All right, friends, more psychedelic requests on the Ken DeVoe program. Lonnie Donegan. Can't pronounce it. That's because I'm chewing gum. I left it last night.
Oh me, oh my, oh you, whatever shall I do?
A dollar is a dollar and a dime is a dime. We're singing another chorus, but we haven't got the boop. That's tremendous. That's from the Super Session album. That is
Super Session, a hard-hitting freeform rock jam session released as an LP recently, is just one example of a record heard only on WYBC FM that has become immensely popular and heavily requested. In the course of the past 18 months, the show has evolved with ever-increasing speed and equally impressive listener response. Originally, it was an experiment, testing the concept of rock and roll on a media-market FM station such as WYBC FM. The music requested has changed too, from soul and teeny bop rock in the early days to today's Cream, Airplane, Hendrix, and Steppenwolf, a sound especially suited to stereo FM broadcasting, and a type of music to be found nowhere else on the dial in Greater New Haven.
Heavy fighting is reported in Prague, while the Czech president confers in Moscow. It's 9 p.m. and this is Jim Brunley with WYBC's Evening Report.
Not just the stories, but the stories behind the stories. In-depth coverage of the day's events with Jim Burnley and the WYBC FM News Department. Heard daily at 10 a.m., noon, 6, 9, and 11 p.m. WYBC FM News stretches coast to coast for live on-the-spot coverage of history as it happens. The assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy in Los Angeles, the turmoil surrounding the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and the news that's important locally right here in New Haven. WYBC FM News activities include an intern training program funded by Yale University, giving valuable instruction on the job, in the studio, and on the streets to members of New Haven's black community. Besides the scheduled daily newscasts, WYBC FM News presents half-hour documentaries on local matters or world matters of local interest whenever big news is in the making. Not all of WYBC FM's music programming is progressive rock. Every weekday evening from 6 till 9, we present Dave Wood and a classical music show unlike anything else in Connecticut radio.
Luciano Ferrio's Omaggio a Joyce, and that was composed by him on magnetic tape in 1959. It used their three texts from Ulysses by James Joyce. Actually, it's the same text read in English, French, and Italian, and he supposedly transformed it into music. As a matter of fact, that is the perhaps the best of the six things, rather, 6 or 7 things, on a Limelight album called Images Fantastiques, electronic experimental music by Berio, Moderna, Ferrari, Xenakis, and Dufresne Baronet. We played the thing by Dufresne Baronet the other evening called U-47, and the humor in that was enough to keep me from playing it this evening. But at any rate, this kind of thing is on Limelight Records, and there are, let's see, I think there are 3 different albums. I'm not sure if they're out now in your favorite neighborhood music store, but they should be very soon, and as a matter of fact, things like that will be out on Limelight 45s. Limelight Records is going to put out classical music on 45s, as are a number of other record companies, and those should be out sometime this fall. Right now we turn to music from France, that, let's see, French overtures, actually, and here we hear the one by Albert from Fra Diavolo with Ernest Ansermet conducting the L'Orchestre de la Suisse Romande.
After the news at 9, the pace quickens. The Willie Wright Show with Solid Soul, New Haven's only black disc jockey and New Haven's only nightly soul program, heard exclusively on WYBC FM. Willie Wright is an established leader in the greater New Haven black community, a man who knows what's happening and is thoroughly in control of the situation at all times. By urging black youngsters to stay in school, by helping black men and women to find employment, Willie Wright serves the community in a very specific way. When Willie comes on through at 94.3 on WYBC FM, watch out!
back, everybody. Let me through here. Pardon me, madam. Pardon me, fella.
Just who do you think you are?
Welcome to the Willie Wright Show, where the big soul sounds are being played. Good God, let me in here. 69 degrees in the Elm City area. 5 minutes past 9 o'clock, and we have a special guest on our show this evening. Who else? Yeah, Big Bob Brooks from Springfield, baby. You know, sock it on out there to you, too, yeah. All right, we're going to start the show off this evening with the one and only King of Soul, Mr. Dynamite, Mr. Entertainment, James Brown, live from the Apollo Theater. And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's star time at the Apollo Theater. $1 Million seller, try me. Please, please, please. This is a man's world. Most constructive tune of 1966, Don't Be a Dropout. Say it again. Let yourself go. Baby, don't you weep. Let's bring him on right now. Everybody, the hardest working man in show business, James Brown, ladies and gentlemen.
Just as Willie Wright fills what had been a gap in New Haven radio programming, so does another WYBC FM airman, Rich Sanders. Rich's specialty is jazz, from down-home funky blues to avant-garde. 3 solid hours of the best in jazz, heard every night from 11:10 till 2 in the morning on WYBC FM. Rich Sanders is a musician himself, and when he talks about the jazz heard on Pardon Our Progress, that's the name of the show, he shares his knowledge with the audience.
Denny Zeitlin from the album Zeitgeist. That's called Offshore Breeze. Zeitlin on piano, Charlie Hayden on bass, and Jerry Grinelli on drums. Let's see. Hold your radios for a second while I choke, all right? Okay, thank you very much. It's much better. Let's see. Speaking of breezes, this is WYBC FM in New Haven. 94.3 megacycles, the exciting sound of hot air for young adults of all ages. It's 1:30 right now. My name is Rich Sanders. The show is called Pardon Our Progress. We play jazz till 2 o'clock in the morning. To sort of pick up your mood a little bit, here's Oscar Peterson and the trio when they performed live at the Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. The album is called Eloquence, and this is something they even put on a 45 record. They try to push it. It was one of those few jazz records they ever try to make popular, sort of like Eddie Harris and Listen Here. That's it. They're trying to push that on the rock stations, and they are. On one of them, it's sort of a pick hit type thing. And on another one, it's on the survey. So you never know, jazz is liable to make it yet. This one never did as far as top 40 rock and roll stations. It made it on some of the easy listening stations, and it's kind of a good song anyhow. It's called The Smudge.
Pardon Our Progress with Rich Sanders is a show done with several things always in mind. The novice jazz fan is given the chance to learn the ropes. The devoted jazz listener discovers nooks and crannies, loops and refinements of the jazz world that may not have been apparent before. For instance, Rich has featured cuts by Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the Spencer Davis Group, and expertly pointed out specific examples of the jazz influence in WYBC FM's usual progressive rock. Which brings us around to 2 in the morning and Diversion with Kevin McCain. Diversion, perhaps the world's most unstructured, unpredictable, and thoroughly enjoyable radio program.
I'm Kevin McCain, and I run a program I started calling, for no good reason, Diversion Beach. Actually, Diversion Beach makes no pretense to being a real beach. All the seagulls and stuff are on records. See? The theory of Diversion Beach is that sometimes when we do this show, we feel like we're on a beach, or at least close to the edge of something. And everything on Diversion Beach is sound. It could be records. Daytime just makes me feel lonely. And sometimes we use tapes. Yep, sure of it. Or voices. And sometimes we make mistakes. And sometimes you don't know whether we made a mistake or not. Diversion Beach doesn't guarantee soul any more than a real beach. But we do guarantee to be on the air like sound at 2 o'clock Tuesday through Sunday mornings. I sincerely hope you'll join us on Diversion Beach Party.
Night people all over New Haven and throughout southern Connecticut do join Kevin every night for Diversion, or Diversion Beach Party, if you will. Here's an example of the freewheeling sort of monologue that helps make Diversion a listening must, and all but impossible to turn off.
WYBC, New Haven.
We have the new Rolling Stones single, which is Street Fighting Man and No Expectations, which incidentally had a large write-up, kind of, not actually a two-page spread in Billboard of pictures from Los Angeles of police brutality, I suppose. It's hard to tell, when they have pictures of police being brutal. I'm not, here's the thing, if you have a society, and if you have a number of people together, the way that they work best is when you organize them into some kind of society. Now, I'm basically kind of anarchistic, but on the other hand, there are many aspects of a society which I kind of like, things like distribution of food and so on, which are impossible without a society. And then if you do have a society, especially if the society was a good one, it would be very good to have a kind of efficient police force. And so police, on principle, I have nothing against. It's unfortunate that the way that the society is organized now, especially for people kind of on sort of one side of it, especially the drug thing is what's, I think, kind of unfortunate. The fact that drugs are illegal put a number of the best people of our generation, myself being 19, on the wrong side of the law. And this is just not a good system at all. And maybe the laws need changing, and maybe they don't, depending on how you look at it. It's just one of those things that happens. We got the Jimi Hendrix 45, Gordon Weingarth, Gordon Kidden here, and got the Rolling Stones. We got 2 new Apple records. Oh, that's the other thing I want to tell you about. We have an Apple record with 2 sides by Lennon and McCartney, and another Apple record, Apple being the distributing company, in this case the Beatles company, 2 sides by George Harrison, sung by Jackie Lomax. So we'll listen to those, so we have some kind of interesting 45s. This is Jimi Hendrix. That's a Jimi Hendrix version of Bob Dylan's All Along the Watchtower. Bob Dylan songs are great for doing rock versions of, because rock musicians generally are better musicians than they are linguists or whatever. You know what I mean. Anyway, the point is their words aren't that good very often, and they have, especially Jimi Hendrix, a lot of trouble with being overdramatic. And in this case, Bob Dylan is never overdramatic. I've never heard a Bob Dylan song that I thought was kind of overdone. They're all much too cynical to be overdone. That's one way, incidentally, those of you who are writing words can keep from getting overdramatic and getting over self-involved. That is, just be incredibly cynical about everything. Only that doesn't necessarily work, but I'll go into that later. In the leads, he has 4 choruses of leads through the middle of that. And the first chorus struck me as kind of greasy. The second chorus was that incredible Hendrix. Hendrix can slide better than anybody I've ever heard. He just has a feeling for the way that notes will move up and down the fretboard if you move your finger up and down the fretboard on a string, which is then still in motion. I'm in a very mechanical thing tonight because I've been reading Erickson's, actually we read portions of it last night. It was Erickson's book on, I can't think of the name of it now, Childhood and Society, because it's very easy to read a book and not pay attention to the name. And that's one problem. If you read a book and you can't remember the author or the name, this is Diversion.
Of course, there's more progressive rock. This is where the whole hip rock trend in New Haven began. Kevin McCain, along with sometimes co-host Gordon Weingarth, makes it a point to stay ahead of the game musically. If it's in the diversion bag and worth hearing, chances are it was heard first in Connecticut on WYBC FM during Diversion. We've shown you what we're doing at WYBC FM New Haven, the exciting sound of stereo for young adults of all ages. Our programming is exciting because every WYBC FM airman is more than just an announcer. He knows what he's talking about, and he knows how to communicate effectively with his audience. For more information or answers to any questions you may have, call WYBC FM Collect at 865-6400, area code 203. or write to us at Box WYBC, Yale Station, New Haven, Connecticut, 06520. Around the clock, around New Haven, more and more of the affluent young adults you want to reach are discovering
The young sound, WYBC swings.